This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network. Available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Let's go, business storytellers. Hey, how's everyone doing? Today, we want to talk about a dream worth fighting for. And what I'm so excited about talking to today's guest, Tim Hightower, a former NFL player, star, and also now currently with the Washington Commanders, Director of Alumni Relations. He published A Dream Worth Fighting For, and I'm so excited to talk about any athletic story. And here's the reason why. Because in content strategy, I talk about the next play mentality all the time. You know what that is, the next play mentality? That means as a football player, right? You run a play. I used to be a lineman at the University of Iowa. And, you run a play. If it's a good play, guess what? You have to run another play in 35 seconds or so. If it's a bad play, you still got to run another play in a little while. But how do you overcome these kind of obstacles in your day-to-day? What can we learn? How can we push forward? So that's what we want to hear from Tim today. He's joining me, and I'm really glad to have him on the show. Welcome, Tim Hightower.
Thank you for having me.
That's how we do it here on the Business Storytelling Show. We fist bump. So, hey, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it. Tell me about the book. So you wrote the book. What prompted you to do it, and what's the dream that you were after, or are you still after it?
There's always a dream. There's always another one, and that dream and evolves as our life shifts. But for me, it was the fourth grade. I dreamed of playing professional football. That was a dream. Accomplished that, and 3 years into a promising NFL career, and I was determined to make it back. And there was a lot that transpired in those 4 years. And that's, I realized that, look, the average NFL career is only 3 years. I've been done, and I owed it to not just myself, but to so many others learned along the way.
And when you're chasing a dream, whatever it might be, whether it's, certainly football is way more physical than what most of us content creators and business storytellers do nowadays. But how do you spot what are the barriers? What are the things you have to overcome? I always find that very difficult, whether it's in business or whatever. In football, we watch so much tape and the I don't know if it's the funniest story or not, but because on the O-line, they have the camera right on top of you, and then we do a drill. We used to do a drill without a helmet on, and guess what? That's how I learned that I was going bald, because somebody said, "Trapp, are you going bald?" But anyway, my point is, you watch film, right? You watch film and you figure out, how do you learn what's your current obstacle? Some things are more obvious than others, certainly.
That's a great question. I think it's as you a goal. You set something in front of you, right? To me, first of all, what am I after? You have to know what you're after. Like, what am I going to picture? And then from there, what do I need to do to attain that? If I want to be the best, it's one thing to say that you want something, or to aspire to something. The time to identify what are the benchmark disciplines that are needed. And in identifying those, hey, do I need to get faster? Do I need to improve my pass protection? Do I need to ability? What are the things that are hindrances that may stop me from having that goal, determining what is the end picture, what is success, and then finding out what and habits and rituals, and from there that'll determine what I should plan for.
You know, what's always interesting to me is when, things look so easy, right? Even, I mean, when I look at your career, 4,500 all-purpose yards or whatever it was, roughly, don't hold me to the exact number here, but it looks easy, right? I mean, you don't see the struggles, you don't see the things you have to work on. You just see the long run. Sometimes you don't even notice the short run, or it's, somebody else's fault, or you were getting up, getting a beer or whatever. How do people understand that it takes a lot of work, that they have to put in the work, and then, how do they kind of peel back the onion, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I remember I wanted to play professional football, and I wanted to play running back, and I was not. So again, what was the end picture? I wanted to be fast. There was a certain time, all backs that I studied as a kid, they had a certain persona, a certain profile that they fit. And I at the time did not fit that. Things that I needed to work on was improving my speed. And so I ran track. And look, it took 4 I got last every single track meet in college. I got last. I remember my senior year, one of the first plays, I'd break out 15 yards. And they were about what was that like. And I had to remind them of this was a man years in the work. And so sometimes that process and that years, sometimes it's days, sometimes it's months, but you never know the work behind the scenes comes to fruition. But you have to, it's like it's work over time where you get results. And the more you do that, the more you're able to do it effortless. The better you're able to where others, it looks so effortless. But behind the scenes, there's years of repetition and work that goes into anything, not just sport, that is displayed at a high level.
What's interesting about that is there's a method to the madness, and certainly that's true in football, but that's also true in business. I mean, if I look at business storytelling and content strategy, there is a method to the madness, right? I mean, there is like foundational things I have to do well. If I cannot write a word or a sentence in correct grammar, I'm going to have a tough time as, a content strategist. Doesn't mean I have to be, some Stephen King or somebody like that. But at the very least,
Sure.
I have to have those foundational things in there. How do we? Well, but then maybe the NFL is even a better example than business in general. Even if you do everything right, does that even guarantee success in the NFL?
Not at all. You have to do everything in your power for gain. And here's the thing: that you could go 0-6 now, 0-17, while doing everything, because you got to look at there's opposition, and they get paid to stop. My job is to score touchdowns and to have the highest level of productivity. My opposition, that's what their job is. They're focusing every single day. Sometimes we have to realize I just was not good enough on that day, or on that good enough. My preparation wasn't good enough. My execution wasn't good enough. Sometimes my opponent on that day, and then that leads to the conversation of that. What's the next step? How can I continue to prepare and continue to evolve? I'm at that next level, but I think it's a constant evaluation, and it's a realization. Just because I do everything that I'm supposed to do doesn't guarantee success. To have success, but realize that there are other business preparing just as hard, if not harder, than you are.
And sometimes, certainly, it's timing, and certainly it's who are you playing with,
Absolutely.
and who is the coach, and all these different things. Can you talk about? And
100%.
that's very similar. That's very similar in content strategy too, right? In business storytelling, because if you have a good executive team, you're building a good content team, you're building the right players, and you actually have the right players on the team, you set yourself up to succeed. Am I just making that up, or is that that's true, right? That it depends on who all the different people are to succeed.
100%. 100%. I was fortunate to play in the Super Bowl, and I look at the roles, and I didn't understand that one of the hardest things for a coach is to have the right, how do you put the right people in an environment but also to buy into this central mission. Like, because there are a lot of ego with there. We all want to be the hero of our own story in a meaningful way. And so I remember just and you got a ton of kids coming from college that we're all used to being the best, right? We being the best. We didn't get there for not having a certain level of ego, but now it's how do as a rookie, how do I buy into my role of a special teams player? Where maybe I'm not 25 times a game, maybe it's 2 or 3. Maybe I'm playing special teams for us to all have success. And the better teams that I've been on, you've been able to assemble the right talent, right? But also you've had leaders been able to get guys to buy into their roles. We can all share in a collective vision.
And certainly that is no different in business. I mean, everybody has their role, and certainly people have opinions about other people's roles, just like everybody has an opinion, whether they liked your run or your catch or whatever. But how do we? Talk about do teams in business can struggle with that, right? When the roles aren't defined exactly well. Let's put it that way. How common is that in professional sports, though? I mean, it seems in theory, right? It's pretty simple. Here's a running back, here's a center, here's whatever. I mean, how is there role confusion at that level too at times, or is it just because people want to do it their way, or how does that look?
Look, there's all types of nuances and variables that take place, and part of it. Look, I'll speak for myself. I'm a firm believer. Sometimes your greatest strength can be. I was very competitive coming in, 5th round draft pick, chip on my shoulder, made this big stage, and I wanted to be the guy. I wanted to be the center of attention. I felt that competitiveness and that drive where you feel that you should have in the workplace. You see it. Sometimes people they want an increased responsibility. They don't. We're comparing what we're being compensated, our roles are in relation to the bigger picture, and we don't quite different role cards. So if we see a different skill set, we may not feel appreciated in what was the time. But I think the thing for me that clicked, and when I would challenge others, whether it's in the corporate or sports setting, determination of my stats, individual stats will always, no matter how well I do, stats are meant to be broken. But when I an NFC championship, the part of the best ever team like that will never be broken, right? And so, me saying, Tim, your time may not be right now. The season for you to contribute in this way, but if you're a part of team success, people want to be attracted. People want to be a part of winners, and so teams, players from winning teams, they always get opportunities with other teams from winners. And so, it's good for me to be a part of something larger. Also, it's better for the team and individuals and for the collective group. Getting that people to understand and buy into that is better to be a part of something star role and something that's not succeeding as well.
And certainly in professional sports, I mean, it seems like it's a revolving door anyways, right? I mean, people are being traded, people are retiring, getting hurt, whatever it might be. But you were talking about the importance of team, and I think that's important too in corporate America, because if you have a good team, if you want to be on the team, right, if you like your teammates or at least respect them and understand their value, I mean, you want to come to work, right? You don't want to it's not just a dread and those kind of things. Now, talk about how do you figure out what your role is? And I'm thinking about, I think the thing you said is the way actually I thought of it in corporate America is people always want to be promoted a lot of times, right? The next thing is being promoted. But being promoted isn't actually always the holy grail, right? Because just because you're good at your job, let's say you're a great running back, that doesn't mean you would be a good offensive coordinator or a good head coach or a good name it, right? I mean, the same is true in companies. How do you figure out where your spot is? I mean, or is it maybe in sports is easier because I wouldn't play running back, you wouldn't play center.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I think the higher up you go, first of all, that depends on the leadership that you have, right? So hopefully you have a leader, a head of vision when they're constructing a team. Needs are in the off season. How can we improve if offense, defense, red zone, uh, stopping the run? They're looking at this big picture, and they're saying, how can we really execute and put some of the best team? Okay, when they good leadership, when they select the roster, they're not just filling spots, and they're looking at how does each member buy into that great leadership. Number two, from the individual, the first one, I came and sat down with Sean Payton, and I said, "Hey, look, why am I from here? What do you see?" Right? As a young guy, I wanted my vision, but the maturation as I got older, I already have a vision. You brought me here for a reason. What do you see? Right? What is your view trying to contribute? And then making sure how can I execute that at the highest. But then also there's times when there's always hole that needs to be filled. And I've seen players have the best success when, you know what, we need a guy on special teams to run down a couple of kicks and be right. Like that's not like, and so finding as an employee or as the holes that no one's willing to do, it may not be the prettiest job, opportunity to insert myself there and excel there. And next thing you know, a gap that's much needed. And next thing you know, your role from being just this third string wide receiver in a reserve role, this position is this. You're filling this gap needed in the team, and now you're going to have a big contract just because you were willing to take initiative and fill a void that you saw.
It's kind of basic business 101, right? You need to find the place where somebody needs help, and then that's kind of where you can offer
Absolutely
your services. Interesting. Now, when you talk about feedback, so this is I'm thinking of business here, right? So in business, when somebody gives you feedback, it's like there's no recording. Do you know what I mean? I mean, sometimes we can look at articles. I mean, in football, everything is recorded, right? I mean, you can watch whether I took my step or not to go after a guy or whatever. But how can you translate that into business? What tips do you have when it comes to giving good feedback when you can't actually watch the tape and say, "Oh yeah, he's right. I ducked my head too early," or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're talking about between management. I'm if I'm hearing correctly.
For example, yep.
For me, that has to be there's a process, right? A process of the good thing that we have is we're meeting every single day, right? So you have the beginning of the year meeting, the end of a quarter to find out how we've done, right? Like there's consistent conversation that's taking place throughout the offseason every day. It's weekly, so you know what the expectations, what the vision, and then you're able to have that colleagues, and then you can see it on the film. As the old saying goes, the film that's translating that into a corporate setting, the more often I can communicating with my colleagues, with management. I know they have that quarterly review built in, but I should be understanding beforehand on there should just be a communication, a constant flow. It shouldn't be a surprise as far as well, I think I'm performing here, and you think we're performing. We get 2 or 3 months down the road, and we're not on the same page. That, to me, that's a and so I think it's being proactive about consistent communication.
Proactive, open, and almost in the moment. I mean, that's one thing. Not that I enjoy getting yelled at, but when you look at football feedback, I mean, it's actually very efficient, because if you just missed the block and Frank Verducci yells at you and says, "Hey, you get on the right shoulder," you just did that wrong. But if he gives that feedback to me 2 months from now, I'd be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I don't remember that. So that's, I think, corporate managers can probably take a page from that book. The last few minutes here, Tim, tell us about the book. Who can get the most out of it? Is it for younger athletes, people who want to kind of reminisce of your career, or who should read it?
Question. I wrote it with a lot of people in mind, and that just came, whether it's the mom who's now transitioning, and she was at a corporate setting. She's trying to figure out, hey, how do I get back out here? I once had a being in the corporate world of owning a business that was derailed. I'm going to get back out to lead who their careers were derailed. They're finishing high school, college. They no longer have sports, and they're trying to figure out, my identity and direction. The Wall Street, the person working on Wall Street who now says, I've been here for 50 years. So really, it's anybody whose dreams, or they're at a point right now where they're saying, hey, there's got to be more to life, right? How do I find the resilience, the take that next step and find out what's more, what's more. And so anybody who's, experienced a setback, thinking about there's some idea or business or relationship that they've always want to go after, hopefully they can be inspired and learn a thing or two from this book.
Fantastic. And who doesn't have a setback every once in a while? So check it out as an inspirational read. It is available. The link is in the show notes. And you can also just Google for it, honestly, to find it. A dream worth fighting for, Tim Hightower. Tim, it was my pleasure to have you on the show today. Good luck with the book, and good luck with everything. Thanks for joining us today.
Great thought. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time, let the best stories win.